More than 500,000 people in eSwatini are expected to vote tomorrow in parliamentary elections. Now, the elected members of parliament are advisors of King Mswati III, who still holds absolute power. Political parties are still banned from contesting elections in eSwatini. Let's speak now to the managing editor of eSwatini, or should we say Swaziland News, Zweli Dlamini, who joins us in studio this morning. Mr. Dlamini, thank you very much for your time. Let's begin with the conditions in the country in the lead up to these parliamentary elections. We'll talk about the importance of MPs, who we understand are advisors to the king. But let's set the pace first with how conditions are in the lead up to these parliamentary elections.
Thank you for having me. The political environment for now in eSwatini is peaceful, and the parliamentary election are expected to be held tomorrow, which is on Friday. You will recall that eSwatini is fresh from a political unrest. So there has been calls within the SADC region and the international community that a dialogue must be held, and even the government of the United States did highlighted that or recommended that at least there must be a dialogue before these elections. But the king went on to hold the elections because he wanted to legitimize his government that is highly questionable as the situation stands.
So the members of parliament that will be voted in, do they belong to political parties, given that political parties are banned from participating in eSwatini's political life?
The members of parliament are elected in what the regime describes as individual merit. Political parties are banned, they are not allowed at all to participate in elections. And despite that, they are also persecuted. And as a result, the main political party in eSwatini, which is Putemo, and other political parties that include the National Liberatory Congress, have been boycotting the elections on the basis that they are not democratic, they are not inclusive. So as the situation stands, the elections that are expected to be held tomorrow in eSwatini, they have been widely condemned on the sense that they are not democratic because they are not inclusive, they are excluding political parties, hence they are not adhering to the democratic principles.
When we talk about the members of parliament who are chosen based on individual merit, what does that mean? Explain that to us a little bit. When a member of parliament is chosen based on their individual merit, what exactly does that mean?
Okay, within the confines of the Tinkundla system of governance, when we are nominated at what we call imipakati, those are the chiefdoms. The system allows you that you must be nominated on your personal capacity, not as a member of a political party. And that means you go to your chiefdom, and the people there will nominate you. And the question is, you are not representing anyone, you're just yourself. And when you arrive in parliament, you are then expected to submit to the authority of the king. So the system in its current form doesn't allow the people to have the freedom of association and conduct elections as members of political parties. And in that regard, that's where the questionable comes, in the sense that it's not democratic, because it then disallowed or restricts other people who want to contest as political parties, as members of political formations.
When you say that these members, they come from chiefdoms,
yes,
does that assume, or would I be correct to assume, that whoever is put forward by that chiefdom, that is someone who may have the express, what is the word? The express endorsement of the chief of that area, which chief may have had consultations with the king. Is my assumption correct that this is how perhaps these people come about, and when we say they are chosen based on individual merit, is that what this means?
Yeah, in fact, if I can just contextualize this, the Tinkunda system.
Yeah.
The Tinkunda system is a system that is made up of what we call a dual governance system. There's the traditional system that made up of the traditional structures that are the pillars of the monarch. The chiefs are appointed by the king, and they rule as traditional leaders with massive influence within the communities. So the system, the Tinkunda system, then we are expected to go to your chiefdom, and that is known as umpagats. And the chief and some of the traditional council known as Bobandlangane, they are expected to approve you. They must agree that they know you within the community. If they say they don't know you, the Elections and Boundaries Commission has all the powers to disqualify you. I will make an example. If you are a member of the political party and you are targeted, maybe you want to participate as an individual, and you are known that you are causing trouble to the king and you are vocal, and the chiefs or the governing council, the traditional council, have all the powers to disown you. Then we don't know this one. And then the Elections and Boundaries Commission will have no alternative but to disqualify you from participating in the elections. So that's how the system works.
Wow. And then once they are elected to become parliamentarians, talk to us about the system of parliament, because based on what we know parliamentarians to be, these are people who are able to criticize the government of the day, whereas in eSwatini you have a monarchy. So if these people are merely advisors of the king, are they allowed to critique him?
They are not allowed at all. And if you look at the constitution, it did speak about separation of powers, the doctrine of the separation of powers, whereby the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature, and they rule along with what we call independence from each other. But then there is the king, who is obviously above all these institutions of the state, and the parliament is then expected, that is under normal democratic principles, is expected to hold the executive accountable and also facilitate and pass legislations. But in this case, with the Tinkunda system, when the king delivered his speech from the throne, and in South Africa you call it a State of the Nation address, and in Eswatini it's called speech from the throne, the MPs are then expected to donate cattle or cows to thank the king that he has delivered his speech. They don't criticize the speech, they just thank him that you have delivered the speech, and that speech is giving guidance to the government. It's a form of legitimized dictatorship, whereby a head of state, because in South Africa, if President Ramaphosa delivers a speech, the members of parliament will then debate and criticize it, and in the process, you have those different and diverse political views that then enhances economic, political, and social development. But in Eswatini, they just thank the king that he has delivered the speech. That is the duty of parliament.
We know that there have been protests in your country, Eswatini, and much of the protest has been about instilling democracy. Where has that fight, or where is that fight now? Do you think that the people who are spearheading that still have the energy? Are they inside the country, or are they not able to do that within Eswatini, and so they have to be in neighboring countries like South Africa, for example?
What is happening in Eswatini, and what you need to understand in the context of the political unrest, is the fact that it was triggered by inequality, issues of poverty, In Eswatini, about 70% of the population lives below the poverty line. And then when you have people, a majority of the people who are poor, and then the minority are rich and more, and they are getting more richer, and while the majority are becoming more poorer. And then you will have a political unrest triggered issues of poverty. People are hungry, and the basic commodities, prices of basic commodities are escalating, and you cannot then conclude that there are certain people who are pushing the unrest. It's the majority of the citizens who want change. And in that context, the people are still inside Eswatini because it's Mswati who want change, not certain individuals.
Final question to you. The king lives this life of luxury, presiding over his subjects. Is there ever a time when he addresses exactly what you've just spoken about? Issues of poverty? Is that something that he even connects with, he understands?
Sometimes he speaks about issues of poverty, but the situation on the ground suggests that he doesn't care. Why I'm saying that is because we have government gazettes in Eswatini that allows companies to pay employees as little as 1,100 rands. And if the government sign those gazettes, it's actually legitimizing poverty because the people who are working are turned into cheap labor. So you cannot fight poverty by underpaying employees because those people have families. And you find a person who is working but living in poverty. So the issues of poverty in Eswatini are well gazetted. There is no political will at all to fight poverty and ensure that the people live a decent life. Hence we have this high level of inequality in Eswatini.
Zweli Dlamini, thank you very much, painting a situation for us as that country, Eswatini, prepares to hold parliamentary elections. You've heard in detail what qualifies the people there to become parliamentarians. Zweli Dlamini, leading a newspaper, or should I say a media organization called Swaziland News. He's a managing editor there. Thank you very much indeed for your time, Zweli. All right.